My daughter banned me from the $150,000 Paris wedding I paid for, just because I don't speak French. She emailed, "Your presence will embarrass me in front of my French in-laws." I decided to teach her a lesson. The next morning, I woke up to 23 missed calls. Chapter 1. The RSVP that broke my heart. I was sitting alone at my kitchen table when her email came through. Subject: RSVP regarding the Paris wedding. I thought it was a confirmation, a thank you maybe. After all, I just finished wiring the final payment for the $150,000 destination wedding my daughter had always dreamed of. A lavish affair in the gardens of a 17th-century chateau outside Paris. Instead, what I read shattered me in ways I didn't know were possible. "Hi, Dad. I spoke with Mark's parents and wedding planner. After careful consideration, I think it would be best if you didn't attend the wedding. It's nothing personal. But, you don't speak French and Mark's family is very traditional. I don't want anything to feel awkward or embarrassing, for either side." I blinked, reread it, scrolled down, hoping for some explanation that softened the blow. There wasn't one. She had CC'd the wedding planner. She had not included a thank you, no apology, not even a second thought. I stared at the screen, my hand trembling slightly, not with rage but with disbelief. I could hear the rain tapping against the kitchen window, soft and rhythmic, like a drumbeat in a war I didn't know I was fighting. She had uninvited her own father, the men who raised her alone, without complaint, after her mother passed when she was 11. I was the one who paid for ballet lessons, braces, college, and yes, even that overpriced Paris wedding. And all because I didn't speak French. It wasn't about the language. I knew that. It was about shame. Somewhere along the way, my daughter decided that I didn't fit the image she wanted to present to her new high society in-laws. That I was a relic of an old life she'd rather forget, the blue-collar father with calloused hands and a plain American accent. I scrolled back up and reread that line. "Your presence would embarrass me." That was the moment something inside me snapped, not with hatred, but with clarity. This wedding wasn't a celebration anymore. It was a theater of image. And I had just been cut from the script. But I didn't yell. I didn't email back. I simply closed my laptop, stood up from the table, and poured myself a glass of water. I needed to think. Not as a heartbroken father, but as a man who had spent decades solving problems in silence. If she wanted a wedding without her father present, I'd give her one. But she'd never forget the cost. Chapter 2. The gift that arrived without a return address. 3 days before the wedding, a sleek black gift box arrived at the Château de Valois, hand-delivered by a private courier. It was addressed to Mademoiselle Eliza Monroe, the bride. No sender name. No note. No signature. But the wrapping was elegant. Parisian. Intriguing enough for the bride to open immediately in front of her bridesmaids, photographer, and new in-laws. Everyone eager to witness another surprise in this picture-perfect fairy tale. Inside the velvet-lined box was a delicate vintage music box, lacquered in deep burgundy with golden trim. Engraved on the top in Old English script were the words, "For the little girl who danced on Daddy's toes." Eliza's face turned pale. She fumbled the lid open. The haunting tune of La Vie en Rose spilled out, soft and slow. A ballerina figurine twirled in the center, arms raised poised like the way she had stood in her first recital. It wasn't just any music box. It was the very one I had given her on her 6th birthday. The one she cried over when it broke 2 decades ago. Except it wasn't broken anymore. It had been restored. Perfectly. Inside, nestled beneath the spinning dancer, was a folded letter. She hesitated, then unfolded it with trembling hands. "You're right. I don't speak French, but I do speak a different language. The one of sacrifice, sleepless nights, and unconditional love. The kind that doesn't need translation. You banned me from your wedding. I won't argue. But remember this. You didn't just uninvite a man. You uninvited a lifetime of memories. Enjoy the celebration. I've already spoken with the people who matter. Let's see how long the illusion lasts when the truth arrives on French time." It wasn't signed. But it didn't need to be. Because in that moment, Eliza realized 2 things. I wasn't just going to walk away quietly. I wasn't done yet. Her hand shook as she shut the lid. But the tune wouldn't stop playing. The box kept turning. That final phrase echoed again and again. When the truth arrives on French time. No one understood what it meant. But I did. Because while they were busy picking flower arrangements and staging champagne photos, I was talking to people behind the scenes. The venue owner, the caterers, the officiant, even the bank. And the first domino was about to fall. Right at the welcome dinner. Chapter 3. The wine glass that never got touched. The welcome dinner was held the night before the wedding. A lavish affair hosted on the cobblestone terrace of the chateau, under a canopy of string lights and soft classical music. 75 guests, all dressed in cream and gold per the bride's theme, were greeted with flutes of Dom Prignan and kisses on both cheeks. Eliza floated from table to table, a vision in white silk, her smile rehearsed and perfect. No one could tell how tightly her jaw was clenched. She hadn't mentioned the music box to anyone. Not even to Etienne, her perfectly coiffed French fiancé who charmed her with poetic toasts and mistook arrogance for class. But she kept glancing toward the servers. Toward the shadows. Toward the guests. Waiting. And then, just before dessert, the maître d' stepped forward with a raised voice. Ladies and gentlemen, a special toast has been prepared, sponsored anonymously in honor of the bride's generous father. Please raise your glasses. Silence fell. People lifted their champagne. Eliza froze. The servers arrived like clockwork, placing new glasses in front of every guest. Slender, crystal, each with a note tied to the stem. A simple line was written on aged parchment. This wine was never meant to be shared with strangers. Only one glass remained untouched. Eliza's. She stared at it, breath shallow, her hand inched toward it, then pulled back. Everyone sipped. Murmurs of appreciation. It was exquisite wine, vintage, deep-bodied, unlike anything they'd tasted. And then the screen lit up. No one noticed it at first, but projected against the back wall of the chateau was a slideshow. Of photos. Not ordinary wedding photos. These were photos of me. Walking Eliza to school. Holding her on my shoulders at Disneyland. Reading her bedtime stories. Carrying her through the rain on my back because she was scared of puddles. Slide after slide. Moment after moment. Proof after proof. Then came the receipts. Tuition payments. Medical bills. Paris wedding deposits. Every vendor. Every expense. Paid by me. Gasps rippled through the crowd. But it didn't stop there. A final image filled the screen. A screenshot of Eliza's email. The one where she banned me. You're just not cultured enough, Dad. You'll embarrass me in front of his family. Please don't come. The silence that followed was brutal. Etienne's parents whispered in French, clearly horrified. Her bridesmaids looked away. Even the waitstaff stared. Eliza stood up. Pale. Trembling. Turn it off, she hissed to the AV guy. But it was already done. The wine glass in front of her. Still full. Untouched. Just like every ounce of effort I'd poured into her for 27 years. That night I didn't show up. But my presence, my truth, was louder than any speech I could have given. And it wasn't over. Because the next morning, the wedding planner would deliver an envelope. One she had strict instructions to give right before Eliza walked down the aisle. Chapter 4. The Isle of Consequences. The sky over the French countryside was postcard perfect. Soft clouds, gentle sunlight, and air that smelled like blooming jasmine. Guests gathered at the historic cathedral in the heart of Versailles, cameras ready, hearts light. A $150,000 wedding was unfolding exactly as Eliza had envisioned. Opulent. Immaculate. And about to unravel. Inside the bridal suite, Eliza stood before a towering mirror in her custom-made gown. Hand-stitched lace from Florence. A train that needed 2 bridesmaids just to lift. Her makeup was flawless, but her eyes betrayed something else. Paranoia. Something had shifted since the welcome dinner. Whispers among guests. Her fiancé's parents pulling away. The photographer arriving late, apologizing after being asked to include old childhood photos in the album. None of it made sense. Then the wedding planner knocked. "This just arrived," Miss Eliza said to deliver it right before the ceremony. A cream envelope. No return address. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside was a handwritten note in neat block letters. "This aisle isn't the only one you're walking down today. Every step is a choice. And some choices come with a bill." Behind it, stapled, were copies of legal documents. Her smile cracked. Power of attorney transfer. A will revision. An executed trust clause. All official. All dated the morning after the wine glass incident. Her name had been removed from every future inheritance provision. No. No. This isn't real, she muttered. The final page was the one that made her knees buckle. It was a withdrawal slip. Signed and stamped. $3.2 million had been transferred into a private educational fund in the name of Nathaniel A. Harrison, my 9-year-old godson. The same boy I'd mentored for years. The same child Eliza once mocked at a family dinner for not being blood. Eliza gasped for breath, white-knuckling the vanity. That money was meant for her future. The penthouse. The spa memberships. The safety net for her influencer brand. All gone. And replaced by a trust for a child she never even liked. Outside the music started. The organ played softly. But inside, Eliza stood frozen. "You coming?" Her maid of honor whispered. She blinked. Her world tilting sideways. Her reflection in the mirror now looked foreign. Like a woman wearing a borrowed life. She took one step toward the door. Then another. But every footfall echoed with memory. Of things she said. Emails she sent. Kindness she dismissed. By the time she reached the grand cathedral doors, sweat traced down her back. Guests rose. The groom smiled nervously. The chandeliers sparkled above. And the aisle stretched ahead. Lined with people who now knew everything. As she walked, some avoided eye contact. Others whispered. A few elderly guests even lowered their heads in quiet judgment. Her heels tapped the marble like a gavel. Sentence carried out. She walked the aisle she paid for. But with none of the respect she once had. No father waiting at the end. Only consequences in lace. And behind her, left on the makeup table, was a second envelope. Unopened. Labeled simply. For when the cameras are gone. Final chapter. The vow she couldn't finish. The candlelight flickered along the vaulted ceilings of the cathedral as Eliza reached the altar. Her fiancé, Mark, beamed. Unaware of the tremor in her hand as she passed her bouquet. The officiant gave a warm welcome, oblivious to the storm behind her eyes. "We are gathered here to witness the union of Mark Renault and Eliza Harrison." Each word felt like static in her ears. She glanced down the aisle. Still no sign of me. Not in the pews. Not in the shadows. Nowhere. Just absence. But not silence. Because every guest had read the letter. The one I'd sent, anonymously but undeniably mine, tucked into the wedding programs. A simple insert. No drama. No venom. Just clarity. I paid for this wedding not out of obligation. But love. I was disinvited not due to misunderstanding. But shame. To those attending. Please enjoy the evening. To my daughter. Know that you taught me a lesson I should have learned long ago. Love doesn't mean loyalty when it's not returned. Polite. Direct. Devastating. By the time Eliza lifted her eyes from the parchment at her seat, the whispers had already begun. By the time she reached the altar, a few guests had left quietly. Now, as Mark recited his vows, she stood in front of hundreds. Stripped emotionally bare. Beneath designer lace. "Eliza," Mark said softly. "From the moment I met you, I knew." She didn't hear the rest. Her mind was flashing back to the email she sent me. The one she deleted from her inbox. The one that began with, "Dad, please don't come. You'll embarrass me." And ended with, "They don't need to know I come from someone like you." Her throat tightened. The officiant turned to her. "Eliza, if you would now share your vows." Silence. A full 5 seconds. Then 10. She looked into Mark's hopeful eyes. Then out at the guests. Then down at her trembling hands. Her lips parted. Nothing came out. A guest coughed. The priest waited. She finally began, voice shaking. Her voice cracked. "Excuse me," she whispered. And without another word, Eliza turned. She didn't walk back down the aisle. She ran. Past the pews. Past the altar. Through the vestibule. Out the great cathedral doors. Into the cold Paris evening. In her wake, confusion. Mark standing alone. Guests whispering. Some knowingly. Others simply stunned. And on the altar, still resting, was a small wooden box. She had placed it there earlier for ceremonial effect. A nod to her childhood. Inside, the last thing I gave her before leaving for the airport months ago. A pocket dictionary. English to French. With a note in the front. "So you'll never feel ashamed to help your father understand the world. I may not speak French, but I've always spoken love." She never opened it. Until it was too late. Epilogue. The email I never replied to. 3 weeks after the wedding that never was. My inbox dinged at 2:13 a.m. I was awake. Sipping weak coffee in the dim light of my small home office. The same chair I used to sit in while budgeting for her ballet lessons. The same desk where I read her acceptance letter to the Sorbonne aloud. Tears in my eyes. Pride in my chest. But this time, it wasn't a celebration. It was a subject line that hit like a gut punch. "Dad, please read this." I hovered. I didn't click immediately. Just stared. Eventually I opened it. "Dear Dad, I don't know where to begin. I've tried writing this a dozen times and keep deleting everything. So I'll just say it plainly. You didn't deserve that email. The one where I said you'd embarrass me. I wish I could take it back. I wish I could say it to your face. But I wouldn't blame you if you never wanted to see me again. After you sent that note to the guests, everything changed. Mark hasn't spoken to me since that night. His family was mortified. Half the guests thought the wedding was a stunt. The whispers haven't stopped. But that's not why I'm writing. I'm writing because I realized something. For years I tried to shed the parts of me that came from you. The accent. The humble beginnings. The men who fixed shoes to send me to Paris. And now, I'd give anything to hear your laugh in that old workshop again. You didn't lose a daughter, Dad. I lost a father. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. Love, Eliza. I didn't reply. Not out of bitterness. But because I knew something she didn't yet understand. Love doesn't need a response to be true. But disrespect earns its own silence. So I let the email sit. Unread again. Unanswered. Unforgotten. I stood, walked outside, and watched the dawn break through the fog. For the first time in months I smiled. Not because she hurt. But because I'd finally healed. And this time, I didn't need translation. Was this revenge perfectly justified? Or should the storm have raged harder? Drop your verdict below.